Episode 1, The Awakening, Anna. The dust in the air was made of ash. All around me, just ash. From another war, another battle. There was a lot of fighting here in America. There was a lot of riots. A lot of destruction, chaos, death. I walked towards the marketplace in my baby blue church jumper and brown boots, a short white jacket, and a pink backpack around my shoulders. I was gearing to trade some of the plants I'd harvested. It was the routine. Go to church on Sunday, and then walk to the marketplace and get as much rations as I could for the week. My family gave me a list of things like medicine, clothes, food. Streets were crowded with people. Most of them were wearing the most atrocious of outfits, but atrocious was our new norm, so I didn't really bat an eye. Men were wearing wigs and high heels. Women were wearing motorcycle jackets with dark eyeshadow, pointy-heeled boots, whole 9 yards. There were girls wearing bras and jeans just out in the public, letting men follow them where they walked. A few normal people, but there were not many like me. There were many people like me, clearly dressed for church on Sunday. I saw people stare at me, their eyes full of livid but cool fury. It was always odd, every Sunday. It wasn't paranormal to the age, so I just kept walking, determined. I walked past a building on the left that had a picture of a girl selling for $500. Shook my head in anger, walked to the sign, ripped it off the wall. I flipped it over and grabbed a pen from the side of the backpack around my shoulders. I wrote in big letters, "Jesus saves," and stuck it back on the wall. I dug through my backpack and grabbed my shopping list. I also grabbed a jar of spices and coffee grounds. No, I love watching them. It's just so funny, I heard a woman say, laughing gaily by her friends. Crystals, said a man to the left in a dark traveling coat. He was showing another woman something. I shook my head again and kept walking. I stepped over the grassy railroads. A guided left, avoiding the pub and the brothel. The market was bustling with people today. Serious? The market was two very large tents put together. Animals were herded into tiny pens, fresh meat stacked on one pole like kebabs. Clothes hung on racks, some drying out in the sun, getting washed in after a trade-in. The market was all about trades. There were some businesses showing the tent, selling things for money, but it was also a place where citizens simply traded with one another. In poor America, the market was the lifeline of the lower class. "Hey, baby, what you got there?" said a middle-aged woman with dark skin and poofy hair. She had wrinkles around her eyes, laugh lines. "Got some spices, Miss Gretchen?" I handed her the spices, and she examined them in playful scrutiny. "Well, I'll trade you for some meat my son killed," she replied. I nodded in consent, and she went and fetched a skinned rabbit. "Got anything else?" she replied, as we exchanged the goods. "Got coffee grounds." Miss Gretchen nodded enthusiastically. "My son will be needing those." I gave her the coffee grounds, and she gave me some medicine. "Thanks," I said curtly. Miss Gretchen patted me on the shoulder and walked off, her hips swaying as usual. I always liked to exchange with her because she was soft and kind, and she had medicine, since her son knew how to hunt and she knew how to heal. I walked further into the tent, intending to get an idea of what people were buying and selling. I saw men in the far corner trading drugs, but that wasn't an option. I saw a bunch of mothers trading food and clothes for baby supplies, their babies on their hips as they traded. I saw many young men bringing in meat. Older men brought in plants. Women and girls had clothes and goats, donkeys, chickens, pigs. There was a pharmacist to the left, but she was very expensive, and she only sold for money. She didn't trade. She was middle class, so only the doctors, electricians, mechanics, teachers, etc. came to her. I could never get medicine from her. I tried selling the family spices and coffee for money, but it didn't work. It wasn't good enough. That's why I found Mrs. Gretchen, because she was willing to trade medicine and food for some spices, coffee for her son. I saw a lot of crystal makers and fortune tellers in the back. I normally stayed away from there because a lot of creeps that hung out back there. And the whole environment, the whole spirit of the booth over there was just not my style. I preferred to say where the necessary products were. The market was selling the same old, so I just left and started heading back home. The rabbit in a plastic bag that was tucked in my backpack, the medicine in the front pouch. But as I was walking past the brothel, I spotted a nasty fight ahead, so I decided to walk to the left of the brothel so I didn't get caught up in it. I turned and walked, my eyes wide open, aware of everything. The left side of the brothel was decorated with spray paint. Defund the police and kill the dictators and empathy and affirmation. Wolves in sheep clothing sayings. I mean, empathy sounds great until it means being empathetic and affirming towards what is wrong. Defund the police only sounds good until a man is in your yard stealing your kids to sell on the black market and there's no one called but a God you hate. Kill the dictators is all good and dandy until dictators are anyone who disagrees with the mainstream media, like Christians. I shook my head once again and took the turn to pass the brothel towards the alley that led back to my house. Before I walked into it, though, I stopped and tucked my little pocket knife into my palm. I knew some of the guys here. I knew their tricks. Smoke met me as I entered the alley. Marijuana. It was made completely legal now, so people were smoking left and right. I strode past a smoking lady in atrocious get-up with heels and bikini on. I sent up a quick prayer for her as I caught a glimpse of the tattoo on her wrist. There's a dumpster in the middle of the lane, as if it had been pushed there intentionally for whatever reason. I tightened the straps on my backpack, grabbed the top of the dumpster, pulling myself over the top. I jumped down on the floor, stumbling back slightly. I looked up at my surroundings and started walking forward. I walked 3 steps and then froze. I heard crying. I walked faster. It sounded like a kid and I knew these parts. I clung onto my knife, ready. I came to a crossway in the alley and I peered in cautiously. I saw a man with a little boy, probably around 12, backed up against the wall. The boy had streams of tears rolling down his face. The man was saying something, I didn't know what. I know that I just started walking towards them. "Hey," I said uncertainly, but determinedly. "Is everything all right?" The boy looked at me, his eyes wide, and shook his head violently. "Hey," the man snarled, looking at me and then back at the boy and grabbing his face harshly. "Don't look at her. Look at me." I continued walking forward, and now the boy was shaking his head as if warning me, but I was almost stupidly determined. The man smacked the boy in the head. "What's the matter?" I asked loudly. The man turned around and smiled at me maliciously. "Who are you, love?" he asked as the boy slid down to the ground and sat with his head on his knees. I didn't blink, I just stared at him. He was just the sort of man I thought would be down here. Red skin, always drunk, misleading, kind eyes, an artificial toothy smile. He started walking towards me and I stayed exactly where I was, scrutinizing him, not moving an inch. "What are you doing to that boy?" I asked. "He's my boy. I'm doing whatever I like to him." I replied. And as he lunged towards me, I sidestepped him and ducked under his arm. I came up behind him and wrapped my arms around his neck, holding my knife to his throat. "Let him go," I said, each word its own enunciated sentence. The man started laughing, wheezing. "You think I would believe a little girl like you would be capable?" But I didn't let him finish the sentence as I pressed the edge of the blade in his skin so that he bled slightly. "Stand up," I said gently but urgently to the boy. He looked up from his knees, his wide brown eyes meeting mine. "Go, buddy," I said softly. The man was twisting violently, trying to get out. I tightened my grip around his neck. "Go," I cried. The boy looked at me sadly and then stood up and bolted down the alley. The man was fighting me a lot more and I couldn't contain him. I was not prepared to actually kill him, and I knew it was time to make my getaway fast. I summoned all the strength I could and drove my knee in between his legs. He gasped in anger and pain, and I threw him down to the ground, bolting down the alley towards my house. I looked behind me, and the man was chasing me. "Come here, honey," the man snarled behind me, sarcastic and threatening. "Come here, girl." I dodged past the smoke, the people smoking cigarettes, and young teens sipping on beer cans as I sprinted towards the road. I finally broke past the alley and turned towards the woods. My legs were tired, but my heart was beating fast in my chest. Man, I had seen him before. He was a pedophile. I had seen him go in the brothels with little girls and boys. He's a bad man. Maybe I should have killed him. I don't know. The man was catching up as I slowed down, and the streets were filled with more people, so I had to weave in and out of them desperately. I looked behind me again, but I couldn't see him. I made it towards the end of the road and soared into the woods. I jumped across the little creek on the edge of the woods and hid behind a massive tree. I peered around the trunk, my ears ringing, out of breath. The hairs were standing up on my arms, and my limbs felt the odd sensation you get when you're really scared, like an electric shock coursing through your body. I didn't see the man, so I stood up shaking and ran through the edge of the woods, looking behind me and to the left, headed north towards the edge of town where my house was. I finally made it to my favorite tree, an old, massive oak with low-hanging branches. I knew where I was, so I cut out left and broke through the woods, panting heavily. I walked slowly towards my house as the fear slowly died down. I took a deep breath, and I checked in my backpack for the meat and medicine I had gathered from the market. The meat was bagged up, so it was fine, and the medicine wasn't spilled, so that was good. Most of it was pills anyway, and I think Mom could have done without the liquid stuff this week if it had gone bad, but it didn't, by the grace of God, so it was okay. My house was small. It was a trailer house on stilts. You had to take the ramp up to the front. Me and my sister Elise used to play games underneath the house, despite my mom's frequent warnings not to. There was a sign on the door that read Evander, our last name. There were a whole bunch of flowers in the front and in the back, a garden for the spices and herbs. We also had some chickens in a coop. Me and Elise collected their eggs for breakfast and also to sell and trade at the market. I walked up the ramp to my house, took my backpack off, and unzipped the front pocket to grab my house key. I put the key into the door, stepped inside. "Anna!" I heard a voice cry, and then looked down, and Elise was hugging me around the waist. I stooped down and hugged her back. "What's up, sis?" I asked, smiling from ear to ear. Elise grinned mischievously. She was about 3 years younger than me, 14 years old, but she was tiny, very tiny. She stood at 4'1", fully grown. Me and her joked about her shortness all the time, but if anyone in school brought it up, sometimes she would come to me in tears. That being said, she was gorgeous. Bright red hair pulled back into 2 French braids, blue eyes and cute freckles. She always wore a little flower clip in her hair, and her cheeks were always rosy. She wore a ruffled pink shirt, jeans with glitter around the pockets, cowboy boots. "Guess what?" I said, putting my backpack down. "What?" she said, twisting her braid around her fingers. "I got your favorite food ever," I said sarcastically as I pulled out the rabbit. Elise scrunched her nose and pretended to gag. I laughed and started walking towards the kitchen, past pictures on the wall. Me, Elise, my mom, my dad. My dad was a construction worker and he worked long hours, so there were a lot of pictures of us with him, still in his uniform because he didn't want to waste too much daylight changing. My mom often wore her boots and jeans with an apron, either making food or gardening. She always had her hair in a braid, tied with a ribbon she had gotten from Dad when he first started dating her. "How was church today?" Elise asked in a sing-songy voice. She always liked that. Goofy. Singing. Oh my gosh, that girl loved to sing. She's pretty good at it. "Good? But not as good without you there, squawking in my ear," I teased. "Amazing Grace." Elise pinched my arm, incredulous. "I do not sound like that." "Sure," I joked. Elise had to stay home with Mom today because she was sick again. I've been taking turns taking care of her and running the errands. "It's okay, though," I said seriously. "I brought the notes so I can talk to y'all about them tonight. It might make Mom feel better." Elise nodded. "Yeah, And I can sing the songs, and I can hold her hand, lift it up for her, so she can feel like she's back in the chapel. I stopped walking to watch Elise dig through my backpack. She was so thoughtful, so sweet, and yeah, slightly annoying sometimes, but I couldn't believe I was blessed to have such a wonderful sister. I was just really scared by how bad everything has been getting. This town by the city has been getting worse and worse. The city was infiltrating its ideas, and the state itself was slowly becoming more and more violent. I was afraid we were going to get caught in another riot for the end of our kind. At night, when I closed my eyes, sometimes I saw the church on fire. Elise, being dragged about her hair, shot in the head. Prospect was hard to bear. Me and Elise set to cleaning up the house. Every now and then we would go check on Mom. She'd be lying in her bed, staring up the ceiling, her eyes empty. It's hard to see. I hoped she would get better. I really did. I wanted my mom back. Mom went through these spells where all of the things that had happened to her seemed to overwhelm her. Like she's stuck in the past, no way out. Never been this bad, but recently something happened that shocked her to her core. My mom had always called us her little crutches. She said that God put us here to renew her purpose. She had grown up in a horrible family. She was often abused. One day they had enough of her, and they sold her to the sex industry. My dad was the one that rescued her. He worked with anti-trafficking for years before the groups were dismantled. He recognized the signs, pulled her out of the situation by reminding her she had a reason to fight. My dad organized a way to break the organization that had trapped her. It was a 6-month operation, trying to get the Exodus back together for this one mission. Operation Save Nyla. It was messy. There were many losses on both sides. My dad killed the head of Sally's Market, as they called it. He blew up the buildings, brought many of the buyers and sellers to jail. Of course, that was before the breakout and the decline of police officers. And now, the Exodus is gone. No one has the fighting spirit anymore. Not even my dad. He used to be so patriotic. The flags everywhere. Trying to get the people to rally behind the red, white, and blue. Squash the attempts to destroy the country, but people got more and more brainwashed. He felt freedom slip through his broken, stepped-on fingers. My mom and dad had been holding on to hope through God alone. They prayed every day for it to get better. They taught us both about love and faith. My mom was losing it, and my dad was working too long. He was bleeding his hands dry. He came home and just listened to us talking, a small smile on his lips as he imagined what it would be like to be a kid again. I could see it in his eyes, the longing. He always kept a cool face for us, but I could see the weariness and the hunching of his shoulders. And now my mom's spells had increased. Something in her snapped when Kayla disappeared. Kayla was a 7-year-old girl that we had been fostering. She had become like our little sister. And then the parents came and said they were ready to take her back. Not 3 days later, they let her out of their sights. Kayla was gone. I don't know where she went. You know, it's nowhere good. We had no one to call to help find her. My dad's gone in and out of the brothels looking for her, pretending to be a buyer. Every time it just comes back, looking sad. It's been 6 months. My mom can't take it. She feels like it was her fault, like she let this happen. It was bringing her back to when she was lost. I half want to just... And I know this sounds horrible, but I wanted to find Kayla in a ditch somewhere, so at least she would have some closure. No, the wound was still opened, and there was no way to stitch it back together, because every time we tried, it just got pulled open again. My mom came back from her spells whenever my dad came home, held her hand. Sometimes she would wake up and look at us and smile sadly, her eyes fogged with tears. She'd sit up from her bed, body sore from laying in the same spot for too long. She'd slip out of bed, hug us, saying she was sorry for forgetting about us. She would walk out of that room, play games with us. So we tried to trade for antidepressants and other medications that may help her calm down. They helped her want to eat because a few times she would just stop eating and drinking. I gave her some of them today. Me and Elise cooked the rabbit on a fire. We giggled and talked about silly things like what would happen if we walked into church one day with a neon dress and heels, like some of the girls we saw at school. Elise sang some songs and I just listened as the fire crackled and the smoke rose into the air. Before Dad got home, we also made sure to water the garden, put some of the spices in plastic bags to take to the market tomorrow. We collected the chicken's eggs and cooked some for Mom. We gave her some liquid medicine because it was easier to help her take. When we came in, she looked at us, breaking her stare. She sat up, let us hold her hand, sit on her bed. We fed her the eggs and talked about random stuff like school and how stupid it was. Elise hummed the whole time. And it seemed to remind her where she was. At home, with Elise and Anna. When Dad walked through the door, me and Elise were setting the table. Dad! Elise shrieked and ran over to Dad. He came in the hallway. His brown hair had dust and white concrete sprinkled on the top. His eyes were tired, but they lit up when he saw us. Dad embraced Elise and ruffled her hair, making her yell at him for messing up her braids. Dad, stop! I smirked and walked over to Dad, smacking him on the arm playfully. Hey, hon, he said and hugged me. How was your day? We both asked in unison. Good, we also both said at the same time. Dad and I grinned playfully at each other. So, where's Mom? He asked as he rounded the corner and looked at the dinner table already, set for 4. In her room, Elise answered, and we all followed him to Mom. He entered the room, pushing the door open gently. Mom was lying in the same place we left her, staring up at the ceiling. Hey, babe, he said, and he walked over to her and took her hand. He started rubbing it. Time to get up, love. My mom was still looking up at the ceiling. Time to get up, he whispered and twisted her braid around his finger gently. She turned and looked over at him. Hi, John, she croaked. Hi, Nyla. Her lip curled as her eyes pooled with water. It's okay, he said gently, bringing his head to hers. I got bad again, she choked. I got bad again. It's okay, my dad said again. My mom sat up and I came to her side and I took out her braid. Then I quickly rebraided her hair for her and Dad tied the ribbon. We as a group helped Mom to the dinner table. Elise and I got the cooked rabbit from the oven, cut it up. We used some vegetables we had harvested from the garden and mixed up a salad. I poured us all a cup of water. Grace, said Elise after we had all settled in the table. She grabbed my hand. I grabbed Dad's. We all linked up together. 1. Dear God, said Dad, thank you so much for this food. Thank you so much for bringing us here today and keeping us safe. Lord, we pray you protect us, bring us healing in this dark world. Keep us on the path of light. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And there was a chorus of amens.